Sat Sri Akal and welcome to Khas Mulakat, special meeting with us today in this show. We call it Khas Mulakat. And he don't need much introduction. Leader of opposition of British Columbia, Mr. John Rustad. And he been to politics, all his life. So he is from Nechako Lakes riding since 2023, and a former BC Liberal before his expulsion from the caucus in 22. He was elected to Legislative Assembly in 2005, so 20 years, and now representing Prince George America. He also served under Premium Christy Clark Cabinet as Minister of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation and Minister of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources. So if I read, we will take all day to talk about it. John, welcome to CJ Sidhu Show.
CJ, thank you for having me on today.
So as we are doing a live streaming right now and talking to you, let's start with the challenge to your leadership. And so tell me what's going on, where you stand and how you feel about it.
Well, we went through a leadership review process, which is something that is standard for all parties. And we had about 17% of the members come out and vote, which is very high for a leadership review. Usually you're in the 5 to 8% range. So we had a lot of good turnout for it. And I received 71% support from the members of the party. And so I'm looking forward to carrying on with the work that needs to be done.
So that's a pretty good 71% support. But
I'd certainly take that in a provincial election.
So, listening to media and the reports and stuff every second or third days, because, people, almost 5 people, 5 MLAs left your caucus and BC Conservative Party for one or the other reason. 2 formed their own, 1 BC and 3 are independent. And one is recently left the party, and I think she's joining her hands with another MLA. They didn't form any party. What is the last defection that happened?
So part of this is, when I came into this party in February of 2023, it's only 2.5, 3 years ago now. The party had 800 members and was going nowhere. It had 2 or 3% support in the polls. And so we built a very large tent over a very short period of time, in a year and a half going into the election. And quite frankly, they might have included some people that weren't comfortable being part of that tent, but were coming in under our banner anyway. And like I say, I have always thought it shouldn't be about being conservative or liberal or NDP or Green. It should just be standing for what's right and making sure that we're fighting for the average everyday person. And some of the people that were in that group weren't happy with people on the left side, and some of the people on the left side weren't happy with people on the right side. And so, we might have made the tent a little too big in terms of having these people as part of it. They've decided that they want to be out doing their own thing, and that's fine. Actually, in my opinion, it actually allows us to be stronger. Because as a party, we cannot be locked into one ideology or another. We have to stand for what's right. And so whether that is fighting for the issues in Surrey, and the fact that Surrey's been treated as a second-class city, or whether that's fighting for, a new bridge over the Peace River that needs to be done up in the north, or whether that's fighting for our natural resources like natural gas, or fighting for the unity of Canada and supporting oil moved through this country, fighting for private property rights. These are the things that we are going to stand for and continue to fight for on behalf of people in this province that want that change. And so if somebody wants me locked into ideology, I'm like, sorry, that's not where I'm going. We need to just make sure that we're standing for the people and fighting for those values that people want. Parental rights. Fighting, for example, in Surrey for a new children's hospital that's desperately needed in our province. Fighting for the crossing of the replacement, I should say, of the Massey Tunnel. Fighting to get our mines open. Fighting for our forest sector. These are the things that we need to be focused on and that we are focused on as a caucus.
So, मेरी मिस्टर रस्टड ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਆ ਕਿ 2.5 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ। 800 ਮੈਂਬਰ ਸੀਗੇ ਉਦੋਂ, ਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਬਿਲਡ ਦ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਫਰਮ ਗਰਾਊਂਡ ਅਪ, ਐਂਡ ਦੇ pretty much came close to topple NDP government. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. So ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਸਰਨ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਬਿਗ ਟੈਂਟ ਹੈ, ਨਾ ਇਹ ਲੈਫਟ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਰਾਈਟ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ I'm going to ask that question, and not center. So that's an interesting comment, John, because people at one point, for whatever reason might be, you think you're fight for right-wing guy.
Yep.
And they start sometimes comparing you with Trump. You went to one meeting, attend meeting in Alberta. Clarify that, because that's nice to hear that it's where you stand as a party politics. Look, for a BC Conservative Party.
So we are a Conservative Party. We're fiscally responsible. We want to make sure that we're standing up for those right values. We believe in small government. We believe in government not intruding into people's lives. We believe in things like parental rights. So we are Conservative. But at the same time, I'm not being defined by just some ideology, because standing for what's right is what's important. And it should transcend across ideologies. And that's why we have people from the NDP or people from the Green Party or people from the federal Liberals, as well as people from federal Conservatives that are part of our movement. And some people want us to be purely on one side, and that's not what we can do. That's not where we should be in British Columbia. We need to make sure that we are there doing what is right for people, standing up for those people. With close to half the youth in this province thinking about leaving British Columbia, it should be government's role to see that they can have a future and they can build a future here in British Columbia. That's what we stand for, fighting for. And if that means we've got to do some things on the right, that's fine. If it means we've got to do some things on the left, that's fine too. But overall, we are a Conservative Party in terms of our values that we bring forward for the people in this province.
So ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ ਇਲੈਕਟ ਹੋਏ ਸੀਗੇ, ਉਦੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਊਂਡ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਇਆ ਸੀਗੇ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋਕੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਫਾਰ ਰਾਈਟ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਰਸਟਡ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਨੋ, ਦੈਟਸ ਨਾਟ ਦ ਕੇਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੇ, ਫਿਸਕਲੀ ਰਿਸਪੋਂਸੀਬਲ, ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਹਾਊ ਟੂ ਰਨ ਦ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਐਂਡ ਸਮੋਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ। ਸੋ BC ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਲੇ ਵੀ BC ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਸਾਡਾ ਮੰਤਵ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਚਿਲਡਰਨ ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਦੀ ਜੇ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ, ਪੈਰੈਂਟਲ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਆ ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਫਾਰ ਰਾਈਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਅਨਸ ਲਈ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਚੰਗੀ ਹੈ। ਐਂਡ that's nice to hear that, John, because it clears up a lot of air in a public's point of view. And so the BC Liberals under Kevin Falcon, when they folded the party, whatever the reason that might be there, how you think, because you had a very good conversation at that time with Kevin Falcon, and he did a pretty good job, but how different you are from the BC Liberals?
Sure. So and I don't want to speak ill of Kevin Falcon in the group, but Kevin Falcon, believed that they should be further on the left side of the political spectrum, and implementing sort of NDP policies, but implementing it right and doing it better. And I disagreed with that. For example, the climate issue is the issue I got kicked out of.
Kevin was, as a BC Liberal, was a centre-right kind of guy.
Well, personally he was, but he actually campaigned in the leadership campaign and actually said, the NDP have got some pretty good ideas, they just don't know how to implement them. I haven't seen any good ideas from the NDP. I'm sorry. I have not seen anything there where I look at and say, those are something that we would want to be able to implement, because everything they've done has destroyed our economy, has made life unaffordable for people, has left crime rampant in our streets and the drug problems going. Like, none of those policies are policies that I want to see carry on in British Columbia. We need to move to policies of prosperity. We need to move to policies of individual rights. We need to make sure that we're cracking down on crime and putting criminals in jail and cleaning up our streets so people can feel safe. We want to make sure that we actually bring solutions to our healthcare system. I mean, can you imagine in Surrey, the expansion to Surrey Memorial has been a promise now for 5 elections of the NDP. 5 elections.
And number of times.
And it's still not done.
Yeah.
Just think about that. 5 elections now under the NDP. And so that, I'm not interested in sloganeering. I'm not interested in those kind of empty promises. We just got to get a government out of the way and get the nonsense over with and get things done.
ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕੈਵਨ ਫਾਲਕਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ BC ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ, ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ NDP ਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਾਹਲੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਉਹਦਾ ਇਹੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਕੈਵਨ ਫਾਲਕਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਹਾਊ ਵੀ ਕੈਨ ਡੂ ਇਟ ਬੈਟਰ ਐਂਡ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟਲੀ। ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਆਰ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ, ਸੋ ਦੈਟਸ BC ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ NDP ਦੀਆਂ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, 5 ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਹਾਲੇ ਤੱਕ ਸੈਕੰਡ ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਿਆ, ਐਂਡ ਅਨਾਊਂਸਡ 20 ਵਾਰੀ ਅਨਾਊਂਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਵੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਹਸਪੀਟਲ ਬਣ ਜਾਣਾ। ਐਂਡ ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ, ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਬਿਗ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੁਣ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਚਾਰੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਵੱਧ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਲਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ। ਐਂਡ ਯੂ ਨੋ ਇਟਸ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਗੌਰਮੈਂਟ brought the legislation and about the bail and those kind of things, and it's needed because people are taking too much advantage of freedom of speech, freedom of this that. Yep. And they take it to a next level and use to their advantage. You're 100% right. The crime is rampant.
So part of that is, yeah, we need bail reform, but we need much more than that, because 70% of the crime is being committed by 30% of the criminals. And so we need to get those people off our streets. So we need an expedited process within the court system for these people who are prolific offenders. So we get them into the system. Then we need to make sure that we got judges that are going to take these people and actually put them behind bars, because we need these people off the streets. Can you imagine if you were going to take even half of the people who are these prolific offenders and put them where they belong, which quite frankly is in a jail? Imagine how much extra time the police would now have to be able to support and keep people safe in their communities, because they're not having to deal with these repeat offenders all the time, being released out in this revolving door process. So we need to push that. We need to push for things like guaranteed minimum sentencing for these people. So there's a bunch of things that need to be done on that side to make our streets safe. And you have to have a government that's willing to step up to the plate and do this work and push for those changes that are needed.
ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੇਲ ਰਿਫਾਰਮ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਲਿਆ ਰਹੇ ਫੈਡਰਲੀ, ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਨੀਡ ਟੂ ਡੂ ਮੋਰ ਦੈਨ ਦੈਟ। ਉਹ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਇਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੇਲ ਰਿਫਾਰਮ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ 75% ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੈ, 30% ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੀਪਲ ਹੈ ਰਿਪੀਟ ਅਫੈਂਡਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ, ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮਤਲਬ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ ਟਰਮਸ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਟਾਈਟਨ ਅਪ ਕਰਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਰੋਡ 'ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਕਮਿਟ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗ ਪੈਣ। And that's a big issue, because it's like one time I remember California, you're 3 strikes, you're throw the keys and you're jailed forever.
Yeah, I'm not even saying just 3 strikes. What about 30? What about 100 strikes? Come on, how many chances do we give somebody? Now, we don't go after people hard on a first offense or these types of things. You've got to be able to be fair in terms of process. But where you have somebody that is not learning the lesson, that is not feeling the consequences, you have to continually ratchet up the consequences so that the more times they do this, the more severe the penalties are. It can't be the way this thing is. And so these are changes that are needed in our system. And you have to have a government that's willing to stand up and say, no, enough is enough. We need to make these changes, because it's people's, individuals' rights to be able to have a free society, to be able to live safely in their communities. Those rights have to be a priority, not the rights of a criminal.
Totally. And ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਆਪਦਾ ਲਾਅ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਸੀ ਵੀ 3 strikes, 3 ਵਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਕੋਈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ, that's it, you're done. And ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ not even that, even more than that, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ if you see there are some small petty crimes in Vancouver like 50, 60 like you said, and they're still back on the street again.
Yeah.
And
we got, I'll give you an example. Up in Williams Lake, much smaller community obviously up there, there is 3 people who are committing a tremendous amount of crime. And when the police have them arrested and they're off the street, the crime numbers go down dramatically in the community. And then they come back out in the street and the crime numbers go right back up again. It's pretty obvious what the solution is here. These people are not learning their lesson. They need to be put away and taken off our streets for longer periods of time. And there needs to be consequences that keep ramping up in terms of the crimes that they're committing.
So ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਿਲੀਅਮਸ ਲੇਕ ਦਾ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਵੀ ਉੱਥੇ 3 ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲ ਸੀਗੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਨਿਕਲੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਜਦੋਂ ਅੰਦਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਡਾਊਨ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਫੇਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਸਕਾਈਪ ਅਪ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਫੇਰ ਉਹ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਦੇ ਕਮਿਟ more crimes. So how differently, John, when and if you become a premier of British Columbia, how you will tackle this crime situation?
Well, like I say, so the thing we need to invest in British Columbia, sure, we need the frontline policing, but we need to get these people that are committing these crimes off our streets. And so we would create a streamlined process in the courts for these prolific offenders to get them into the system much quicker, so that it isn't 2 years waiting to get into the system. We're going to make sure that we have the bar set at the right level, so that you're not having the Crown prosecution eliminating the opportunity for these people to get in front of a judge and get put into jail, quite frankly. And then we're going to be pushing the federal government for minimum sentencing for these people who are prolific offenders, so that that you can see this accelerated or this increased consequences for criminals. So that's the process needs done. But there's something else that we can do, particularly when you have these violent offenders, these people who are threatening, who maybe have killed somebody, or maybe who have, are clearly have a mental health challenge.
Yes.
Because when you look at it, the Mental Health Act says if somebody is at risk of harming themselves or others, they could be held and treated and not released until they're no longer a risk. And so if our criminal system will not put these people behind bars when they commit these crimes, maybe we have to look at using the mental health system, because that's the one thing in BC that we can do to get these violent, prolific offenders off our streets, to make our society safer. So we're going to take every step that we can to address this head on.
So ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟਲੀ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸੋਲਵ ਕਰੋਗੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਫਰੰਟ ਲਾਈਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੁਲਿਸਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਕਰੀਜ਼ ਕਰਨਗੇ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਰਟ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾ ਵੀ 2-2 ਸਾਲ ਵੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿਣ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਪੀਡ ਅਪ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੋਰ ਸੀਰੀਅਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਟ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟਲੀ ਟੈਕਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਦਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਹੈ। ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ like a mental health issue, what happened to recently, that Filipino event,
in the Lapu-Lapu event.
Lapu-Lapu incident, and there is a more like that. We used to have a facility in Maple Ridge, and that kind of facility, these kind of offenses, and like you said.
But it goes hand in hand. We need, for example, for addictions, we need more treatment, but also recovery. There has to be that investment to deal with the drug issue. For mental health, it's the same thing. We do not have the professionals, we do not have the facilities to be able to truly tackle mental health in this province. And so we need to do this, and we need to look at
I think,
professionals.
John, we have to be proactive.
We have to be proactive. We have to look at long-term treatment. There are some people, unfortunately, who just cannot function in society. Some of them, because of drugs, have got permanent brain damage, and we're just saying it's okay to have them living on the streets. And I disagree. I think we need to be humane about this. We actually need to look after these people and have a place to be able to support them through whatever life they can live through this. And so that means we're going to have to look at having facilities like perhaps the old Riverview. And I think we could take the Riverview and actually make it a world-class center for how to treat mental health issues and how to support people through mental health. And I think those are the types of things that we need to be looking at, as opposed to just saying, no, it's their right to go out and live on a street. I don't think that's the humane thing to be doing.
So ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਦਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਡਿਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੀਜ਼ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਮੇਪਲ ਰਿਜ ਰਿਵਰਵਿਊ ਕਾਈਂਡ ਆਫ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਉਹ ਸਟੇਬਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਛੱਡਣਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਕਰ ਦੇਣਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣੇ ਪੈਣੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਟਾਕਿੰਗ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਦੈਟ, ਜੌਨ, ਇਟ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕਮਸ ਬੈਕ ਟੂ ਨਾਓ opposition is divided. Like you have 39 members under you, but then there is these people who left the party, and that's how Mr. EB, Premier, is laughing, because he tried to force election sooner than later because he knows that the opposition is divided. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if he wants to have an election, he should have the courage to go and actually do it. Let's dance. Let's actually have an election tomorrow if he wanted to. We are prepared and ready to fight. And I'm not worried about the independents or the other parties. I know for a fact that people in British Columbia are looking for change. And I know for a fact that we can provide British Columbia with a vision for how we can prosper in this province. And that's what we're going to be continually doing and talking about. And so David Eby and the NDP can call an election any day they like. I'd be happy to go and fight an election based on the issues and the values that we stand for and that we want to see in British Columbia. So I'll call his bluff, drop the writ, let's go. But I doubt he'll have the courage to do that.
ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਧਮਕੀ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾ ਲਈਏ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਆਪਸ ਡਿਵਾਈਡ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਮੈਜੋਰਟੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਦੇ 4 ਸਾਲ ਮੌਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਰ ਲੈਣਾ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਾਲ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਡਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਫ ਹੀ ਕਾਲਸ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਅ ਪਲਾਨ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਅ ਮੈਂਡੇਟ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਰਿਟ ਡਰੋਪ ਕਰਦਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਕਰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਸੋ ਉਹ ਪਰ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਰਸਟਡ ਸੈਡ ਉਹ ਰੈਡੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਐਵੇਂ ਫੋਕੀਆਂ ਧਮਕੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਦੇਣ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਸੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ 2-3 minutes left. Thank you for making a time to come here for a short period. There is a bunch of small issues. There was an advertisement done, the money they got from federal government, like about 300,000, and they give 100,000 to media. I don't know how and what kind of accountability is about that, about extortion and those kind of cases. And then bit talk about the pipeline because the northern BC he's refusing, and Alberta Premier, how strong she is to build a pipeline. What is your take on that?
So I'll start with the pipeline issue first here. And look, we're supposed to be pushing back and fighting against the Americans. So instead, we are giving them our oil, selling them our oil because we've got nowhere else to send it to, at a 20 to 30% discount. That's $50 to $80 million every single day that we're just handing to the Americans saying, here, thank you for being our neighbors. In British Columbia, we're selling our natural gas at an 85% discount to the Americans. We're saying, here, have our natural resources, take advantage of us. That's what David Eby supports. He is actually supporting the Americans. We actually seen trade with Asian countries drop and trade with the Americans expand under David Eby. And he says he's fighting for Canada, he's fighting for BS. This guy is standing up, doing everything he can to actually support the Americans taking advantage of us. And this is why we need to get an oil pipeline to the North Coast to get our product out to international markets, to stop giving that money for free every single day to the Americans, getting our natural gas offshore so that we can realize full prices for it instead of selling it to the Americans at an 85% discount. You want to be tough with the Americans? That's how you do it. You stand up, you get our products to market, and you say to the Americans, we don't need you anymore because we have other places to go. But we want to trade with you. We're happy to do that, but treat us fair. If you're not going to treat us fair, we're actually going to go elsewhere.
So ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਈਪਲਾਈਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਨਾਰਥਰਨ BC ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਬਾਕੀ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਮੈਂਟ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਇਨਫ ਟਾਈਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੇਬੀ ਆਈ ਵਿਲ ਕਾਲ ਯੂ ਬੈਕ ਅਗੇਨ ਪਰ ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ 85% ਡਿਸਕਾਊਂਟ ਤੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੈਸ ਦਿੰਨੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਅਸਲੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਉਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਹ ਲੜਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ 50 ਤੋਂ 80 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਡਾਲਰ ਉਹ USA ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪਾਈਪਲਾਈਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਬਿਲਟ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਪੈਣੀਆਂ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਿ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਈਬੀ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਫॉर द sake of time John what is your take on the federal budget?
So when I look at the federal budget, there's some things I like. So for example, I like the fact that there's a focus on improving productivity and trying to attract investment into British Columbia and into Canada. It's something that's sort of needed. What I don't like is there's still the brakes on our economy that shouldn't be there. So for example, the net zero targets, the emissions caps, the industrial carbon tax, these things are directly affecting our ability to actually realize products because we're having to compete on a world market. They don't have to pay those prices and we do. And so I was hoping to see more realization of that. I was hoping to see more support for the idea of getting our natural resources offshore to other markets. But so like I say, there's some things in there that I think are good, but we missed the mark, I think, in truly being able to unleash the potential of our economy, especially for British Columbians.
ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿ ਬਜਟ ਬਾਰੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਚੰਗੀਆਂ ਕਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੰਗੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਟਿਵਿਟੀ ਪਾਰਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਵਧੀਆ ਆ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੈਚੁਰਲ ਰਿਸੋਰਸਿਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਫਸ਼ੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕਰਨਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵਧਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਪਰਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਫੋਕਸ ਹੈ। ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀਅਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਰਬਨ ਪ੍ਰਿੰਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫੁੱਟਪ੍ਰਿੰਟ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਕੈਨ ਬੀ ਮੋਰ ਕੰਪੈਟੀਟਿਵ। So, well, thank you very much. Would you quickly like to say at that?
Well, what I'd say, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's always a great honor to be able to be on and talk to this. And to the people that are watching and listening, we are going to continue this fight. We are not done with this. We want to make sure that we fight for the changes needed in British Columbia. We have the potential in British Columbia to be the most prosperous jurisdiction in North America. And the Conservative Party is going to be determined to carry on that fight and make sure that we realize our potential and that our children can look forward to building a future right here in British Columbia and in places like Surrey.
Quick question. The MLAs who defected and gone one way independent or one BC, is it a possibility to bringing them back on the fold?
Look, a week can be a long time in politics. You never know what may happen. But my perspective is this. I am willing to work with anybody who wants to be part of forming the solution of bringing an end to David Eby and what the damage that they're doing as the NDP are doing to British Columbia, and that want to see our policies move forward to be able to bring prosperity for people. And if people want to be part of that, I'm interested in having that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Rustad.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So ਸਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਜੌਨ ਰਸਟਡ, ਲੀਡਰ ਆਫ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ। ਕਾਫੀ ਖੁੱਲੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ, ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ we had a short period of half an hour. I will invite him again for a full hour show and talk about a lot of other things that's happening. So ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਕਲੀਅਰਲੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਰੌਲਾ ਪਾਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਦੇਣੇ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਕਰ ਲੈਣ। And he said they are ready to fight. And he want to do a lot of good things for British Columbians because, as you see, a lot of people are upset with NDP because a lot of things they are announcing but not happening. ਜਿਵੇਂ second hospital ਵੀ very announce ਕਰ ਹਟੇ ਆ, ਜਿਹੜਾ second hospital ਹੈ ਉਹਦਾ ਨੀਂਹ ਪੱਥਰ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਫਿਰ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਚੱਕ ਕੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ। ਸੋ there is nothing happening. He want to build a children's hospital and that's well needed because children's hospital ਹੁਣ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਸੀਰੀਅਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੋਵੇ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ। ਇਵੇਂ ਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਸੀ ਟਨਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵਿਚਾਲੇ ਪਈ ਹੈ। ਪਟੈਲੋ ਬ੍ਰਿਜ ਬਣਨ ਲੱਗਿਆ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹਲੇ ਮਤਲਬ 4 ਲੇਨ ਨੂੰ ਹਟਾ ਕੇ 4 ਲੇਨ ਦਾ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲੱਗਿਆ। ਸਿਰ there are lot of things needed. There are people are looking forward to the change but is looking forward to see what's going to happen. ਇਹ ਖਾਸ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ with the leader of opposition। ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ CJ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਸ਼ੋ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ, ਰੱਬ ਰਾਖਾ।